We've been taught that being a good partner means giving everything: more support, more sacrifice, more patience, more understanding. But for many men, being supported isn't actually the problem. Being misunderstood is, and those two things are worlds apart. Because support usually means helping him, understanding means accurately seeing him. A partner can sacrifice constantly and still completely misread the man standing in front of her. That's the paradox. Some men are drowning in support while starving for understanding. And honestly, this is where a lot of relationships quietly start breaking down. Not because love disappeared, because interpretation did. A man pulls away for a few hours after a stressful day. The relationship interprets it as emotional distance. A man becomes quieter when pressure increases. The relationship interprets it as disinterest. A man gets intensely focused on solving a problem. The relationship interprets it as emotional absence. But the reality is often much quieter than that. For a lot of men, stress does not create emotional expression first, it creates containment. Because many men process pressure privately before they process it relationally. And when that gets constantly misread, something frustrating starts happening psychologically. The man no longer feels emotionally unsupported, he feels emotionally unseen. That creates distance much faster than people realize. Because most men are already carrying internal pressures they rarely articulate clearly: pressure to succeed, pressure to stay useful, pressure to remain emotionally controlled, pressure to provide stability, pressure to not collapse publicly. And many men become very skilled at hiding these pressures. That's important because eventually people stop realizing they exist at all. The man still works, still performs, still shows up. So everyone assumes he's fine. But internally, he may feel psychologically overloaded in ways almost nobody notices. For a lot of men, silence is not a wall, it's a cocoon. His nervous system is trying to solve the problem internally so he can return to the relationship as the stable version of himself again. Now, obviously, this does not mean men should never communicate. Understanding is not a hall pass for silence. Healthy relationships still require communication, still require emotional effort, still require accountability, but there's a difference between explain yourself so I can judge whether your emotions are acceptable and I'm trying to understand what's happening underneath this behavior. Farquhar and Carnegie, people feel that difference immediately. One creates defensiveness, the other creates trust. And ironically, understanding often makes men more emotionally open over time than pressure ever will. Because now vulnerability no longer feels dangerous, it feels survivable. That's why sacrifice alone rarely creates deep loyalty in men. A partner can do everything for him, organize his life, constantly accommodate him, endlessly sacrifice herself. And while he may appreciate it, that doesn't automatically make him feel understood. Sometimes it actually creates more pressure, because the moment someone starts losing themselves for you, love can quietly start feeling heavy instead of connecting. Now, there's emotional weight attached to the relationship. Now he feels responsible for deserving, everything being sacrificed for him. And that can quietly turn love into performance anxiety. That's the paradox nobody talks about enough. Sacrifice often creates obligation, understanding creates safety. Those are very different emotional experiences because deep understanding is rarely about doing more. It's about seeing more accurately. It's realizing that his silence after work is exhaustion, not rejection. It's understanding that solitude is sometimes regulation, not abandonment. It's recognizing that when pressure increases, many men instinctively become more task oriented before they become emotionally expressive. And for a lot of men, that level of understanding feels incredibly rare because many men spend their entire lives being evaluated by what they produce, while almost nobody asks what carrying all that pressure actually feels like internally. That's why some men become deeply loyal to the person who simply understands the emotional language underneath their behavior, not the person who sacrifices the most, the person who sees clearly. That changes everything. Because now the relationship stops feeling like another place where he must constantly explain or defend himself. It becomes psychologically breathable. And honestly, that kind of emotional relief is powerful. That's also why many men value a partner who maintains her own identity more than one who endlessly sacrifices herself. Because self erasure does not create emotional safety, it creates imbalance. A man may appreciate endless sacrifice, but eventually, he also feels the weight of it, the pressure of it, the responsibility of carrying what someone else gave up for him. But a partner who understands him without disappearing herself, that creates something much healthier. Now the relationship feels mutual. Two whole people, two nervous systems, two identities, not one person emotionally collapsing into the other. That's why loyalty is rarely built on how much someone gives up. It's built on how emotionally safe people feel being fully seen. And many men are not secretly looking for a woman who sacrifices everything for them. They're looking for someone who understands the parts of them they rarely know how to explain. That's a very different thing. A man might stay because of your sacrifice, but he will usually thrive because of your understanding. What's one quiet way you process stress that people often misinterpret? Let me know in the comments.